Everyone, welcome to the Journal Editorial Reports. I'm Stuart Varney in this week for Paul Gigot. The Dow surged Friday on word that Barack Obama will tap New York Federal Reserve President Tim Geithner for Treasury Secretary. The near 500-point rally late in the day, after an otherwise disastrous week on Wall Street, was a clear sign of just how anxious the markets had been about the direction of the new administration's economic policy. In today's weekly Democratic radio address, President-elect Obama said he aims to create 2.5 million jobs in a 2-year plan to stimulate an economy facing, quote, a crisis of historic proportions. Joining the panel this week, Wall Street Journal columnist and deputy editor Dan Henninger, assistant editorial page editor James Freeman, and OpinionJournal.com columnist John Fund. James, to you first. What does Tim Geithner's move to the Treasury tell us?
Well, certainly it was a positive sign as interpreted by the markets on Friday, but basically people are giving him credit for managing this last year of financial crisis, and I think you have to ask whether he was in part contributing to it. Go back to March and Bear Stearns, that decision to bail out an investment bank. The government had never done that before. I think it created a lot of uncertainty in the market. It made all the other financial CEOs look to Washington instead of fixing their companies. And
you're critical of his track record.
Well, I think you can't look at this year of bailouts and say, boy, that worked exactly as everyone hoped it would. Stocks have gotten crushed. It created uncertainty. So, I mean, I'm glad that the market rallied. Obviously, if people take some comfort from the fact that there's continuity here, that's great. But what we're getting here is going to be a lot more intervention in the markets. And so far, I think you look at the last year, that's had a lot of destructive effects.
All right, Dan, I see that former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers has a role in the new administration. What is it, and what does it tell you?
Well, yeah, Stuart, this is a somewhat surprising development. The reporting on the Geithner story noted that Larry Summers is going to join the White House as an economic advisor. Now, on the one hand, Summers apparently lost out the Treasury job because of feminist opposition. But if I'm Tim Geithner, I got to be wondering, if you have a former Treasury Secretary in the White House close to the President giving him advice on economic policy, who's the Treasury Secretary, in fact, Larry Summers or Tim Geithner? I'd make a second point as well. Tim Geithner regards his years at the IMF in the middle 1990s when the United States bailed out Mexico and the Asian economies as one of his proudest moments. That was during the Clinton administration. Larry Summers was there as well. This, to me, is a red flag because the policy was devaluing currencies, and raising taxes. Extremely interventionist. And if we're going to return to the policies of the mid-1990s, I think we could have a problem.
But you could say there is bailout experience and a great deal of it.
You could put it that way for sure.
All right.
Lots of bailout.
John, let's move away from Treasury and move to a bit more towards politics for a second. Hillary Clinton, we understand, on track to be the Secretary of State. Can you make the case that Hillary at State is a plus for the Obama camp and that Bill Clinton is a plus for the Obama camp?
Well, Bill Clinton will do what Bill Clinton does, but I certainly think he'd be somewhat circumscribed because obviously Hillary Clinton would not want him interfering overly in foreign policy. I think he'd stick to his philanthropic knitting. Of course it would be a plus for Obama. It removes the single greatest potential rival he has within the Democratic Party and within the U.S. Senate. She basically would have to give up on partisan politics. She would take instructions, obviously in the end, from Barack Obama or Rahm Emanuel, the Chief of Staff. I think it's effectively, if she takes it, and I'm still not sure it's going to happen, it would effectively mean she's largely taking herself out of the running for a future presidential race, and certainly from any possibility of challenging Barack Obama should his administration turn out very badly.
You see this as a plus for the Obama team? There's no negatives here?
Well, there certainly is, because the Clintons are the elephant that fills the room. They're larger than life, and she's not used to taking orders from anyone. We know that from the Clinton years. And Bill Clinton always has the potential of getting into the headlines.
Okay, look more broadly now for a second. Bill Richardson at Commerce, Eric Holder, Attorney General, Greg Craig, White House Counsel, Hillary on track for State, Tom Daschle, Health. All of these names we know from the 1990s, most of them from the Clinton era. This is Back to the Future.
It's a great reunion party.
Okay, you can put it like that, John. What do you say, John?
Well, liberal Democratic friends are kind of shaking their heads and saying, you know, we would have voted for her if this is what we wanted, the Clinton reunion. This is not the change that I think a lot of Obama voters were expecting.
Well, I don't think there was ever really going to be change. The change that they were promising was no more George Bush. But they weren't coming into office to propose something new in Democratic policy, it's going to be a very post-Vietnam traditional Democratic administration. He's already promised in his Saturday morning address tremendous amounts of public spending on infrastructure, roads, bridges. There's nothing really new about that, but it is a change from the Bush administration.
What do you make of this, John?
Well, I think the Democratic Party has basically become a captive of many of its special interest groups. They're going to be well represented in the Obama administration. But on broad macroeconomic issues, I think Barack Obama is going to be very circumscribed because we're going to have an extremely weak economy. And as much public spending as there may be, I predict there will be no tax increases the first year because there's not a single school of economic thought that says that in the middle of a deep recession, you raise taxes.
John, is it a unified Democratic Party?
I think it largely is, especially if Hillary Clinton is brought into the fold. I think Barack Obama starts with perhaps the greatest expectations, but also the greatest goodwill that any Democratic president has had in a long time. And he may even have enough clout to challenge Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid not to lead with congressional agenda items that will be controversial, such as, for example, the union card check or gays in the military or massive environmental programs that might distract from the macroeconomic programs Barack Obama is planning.
James, from what you said earlier, this is going to be an interventionist administration. We're going to get a lot more government and a lot more government spending.
Those are the signals. And by the way, I think the Democratic Party was united behind Barack Obama without him picking Hillary Clinton. But I think the Geithner pick, the rest of them, what's missing here is the big signal that we are going to create in the United States incentives for all this private capital on the sidelines to get into the game and invest. You can't create a stimulus package big enough to grow our economy. You need to encourage people with private money to invest.
Yeah, the news just keeps on coming, doesn't it? All right, now.